Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
My life is a mess right now. Have you said that? Have you heard that from other people? There's a reason for it. When I say a mess, there's clutter, there's things everywhere. Don't even look around here because I'm due to clean. But there's a reason for it. It's a response to things that you're going through, you went through. That's what makes this organizer, professional organizer, radically different, because she doesn't just help you clean things up. She helps you clean up your life at the same time. There is a correlation. Today, we're going to talk about that and also some of the myths that surround organizers. Emily Guderian joins us today. Welcome back. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Steve. It's nice to see you.
And you are the owner and CEO of Built to Be Visible Pro Organizing. We hear a lot of different myths, misconceptions when it comes to hiring an organizer. How about one? What do you hear often?
I see it a lot. I see it on all these different blogs, and there's this movement out there that says you need to embrace minimalism, that it will simplify your life. And in my world, and my world is coming from a whole different perspective on this organizing thing. In my world, hoarding and minimalism are two sides of the same coin. So this idea that you simplify life, actually, it's pushing you in a direction that may not be a best fit for you.
We jump down the rabbit hole now.
Right. Here I go. I'm doing my thing again.
They're two totally separate things. You picture the hoarder, you got that. The minimalist, you've got that. But there's a connection.
Right. Same coin, two different sides. So the hoarding thing seems to be something that pretty much everybody understands, that there's something stuck for that person emotionally, mentally, that kind of pushes them in this direction of finding security in the things. That's hoarding. But the flip side of that same coin is minimalism, in that this need, this push, this desire to get rid of every single possible thing that could ever be extraneous. It's the same urge. It's the same unresolved emotion that kind of fuels that need. Homes are designed to be stocked with food, with groceries, with the clothes, the things that you need for the needs of the family. So this push to kind of eliminate anything that could possibly be extra is a similar type of obsessive activity. I hope I didn't step on too many feet there.
No. But just a different way of handling what you're dealing with.
I don't think it really simplifies life at all. Addressing the things that are, maybe you haven't attended to in a while, perhaps that can simplify your life. But this idea that this push toward minimalism will automatically give you a simplified life, I think that's the myth. That's what I come in hot against. And that's where I kind of disagree with some of my colleagues in the industry, that minimalism doesn't always simplify life. It could just be more of the same thing that kind of fuels hoarding on the other side.
Do you feel, when we talk about minimalism, that it's kind of the same, or can be the same thing as somebody cleaning and just sweeping things under the rug?
Yeah, for sure. There can be like almost an obsessive push to do that kind of thing. And when I see that, I see it in myself. There's things that I get stuck on. When I see that, I know that there's something there that probably hasn't been addressed. We all have it. There's no judgment that I'm dropping on minimalism. There's no judgment that I'm dropping on hoarding. It's just what I really want to make sure is that people understand that when you catch yourself in those behaviors, or when you see it, to like be thinking, what's stuck here? What's going on? There's more than just a need to simplify. That may be what they're saying, but I think there's something else.
So let's talk about some of the things that people deal with. And I want to start this part of our conversation here by saying, I met somebody recently, just a friend of friends, and we all hang out, whatever. And he's got some stuff going on. I'm like, there's definitely, I spoke about that. He spoke about, what he's got going on. Go back to his house, really, nice house. Um, Mess. It's like
Yeah.
stuff all over the place. So to me, and I don't judge, I just, take the facts in. Like it mirrors his life. Like he shows up late to things, and it's been a challenge. And there's a lot going on. And I think that gets us to the trauma response, why we respond to certain things in our living situation.
Sure. So trauma response is kind of a buzzword. I've jumped all over it, but I don't know about you. When you think of trauma, do you have like this mental image that you go to when you think of that word trauma?
I've done a good part of the work, so I'm the worst, not the right person to ask for this, because I identified my my gateway to change was hypnotherapy. And I said to the
Oh, very
therapist
nice.
from day one, this is a couple of years ago, I said, right away, take me back to my childhood. Let's go. That's where we're going. Because I know for many of us, and not that I had a bad childhood, but there's things that go on that pilot us now. So what's a trauma? Got bullied on the playground. That's one of the things that,
Right.
why I was acting a certain way in terms of confidence and things like that. It goes right back to that, and other things. So trauma, I guess there's, the uppercase T trauma and the lowercase T trauma.
Right. And so I've always thought, the uppercase T trauma, like the abuse, the violence, the first responders, all of
Yeah.
that is what I've always thought of when I, think of trauma. But you're right. I think there's more of a nuanced definition of it now, in that it's anything that distresses you, whether it's physically or emotionally. And if you find yourself thinking about it, maybe thinking about it relentlessly, then you know that that's trauma. So
Mhm.
I kind of refer to both the capital T and the little T. And there's the interesting thing that I've learned is that it's never the event that is the problem. It's the where we get stuck is what we say about the event. And another way
Hmm.
of saying it is, life has no meaning other than the meaning that you assign to it. Same with an event. An event has no meaning other than the meaning that you assign to it.
Hmm. So I want to think about that for a second. Let's say pick anything from somebody's childhood, bullied on the playground, whatever it is. Go hypothetical. That may affect one child this way, and it would affect another that way. It would just
Right.
roll off the shoulder of one, but then the other, they would carry it. They're putting that meaning into it, but as a child, they don't know that they're doing it. So how
Exactly.
do we look at it that way?
Well, that is the way to look at it. It's just the event. So the event is the event, and it really doesn't. Yeah, it's not that important. What is important is what you say about the event, and that's what we target when we do the release. Is all the things that you say about the event, and the things that affect what you say about the event are your belief system, your culture, the way you were raised, perhaps the belief systems of your parents or those that were primarily in your life. There's perhaps your personality. All of these different things kind of factor in on how you the meaning that you assign to the event. So in muscle testing, in this applied muscle
Yeah.
testing that we use, we talk about first circle and we talk about second circle. And that's kind of how we break it down. So first circle is the event. That's what happened. Somebody said something unkind on the playground. Second circle, where we as humans spend pretty much all of our existences in second circle, is I'm not strong enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. Nobody likes me. That's the meaning. And then that shows up in a myriad of different ways in people's lives. I'm the expert on the way that it shows up in your physical space. the clutter or the hoarding. Usually if you're on the minimalist side of things, you're not calling me. You don't need to call me. But even that, that trauma is showing up in the way that you deal with things.
Hmm.
We all have that stuff. That's the amazing thing, is
We all
there
do.
is no shortage of skewed meanings that we assign to events in our lives.
And for anybody that says, I'm fine, I got no traumas, nothing ever happened, it's all good. Not being truthful with yourself.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
We all have them. And they could be so, to others, so tiny, something little. But when you fast forward 30 years, 40 years, it's so impactful in your life. So muscle testing, you
Mhm.
mentioned that. Is that
Applied
kind of,
kinesiology is another name for it.
can you do that virtually with somebody?
I can. So I have, when I'm with somebody in person, I have them in a reclined position in a chair, and I use their arm. And we're going to use this joint on their shoulder. Their arm is up, and I'm pushing one way, and they're resisting me the other way. And it's based on this premise that the muscles in the body are strong in the presence of that which promotes well-being or health, or that which is truth. And then conversely, the muscles in the body are weak in the presence of the not truth, or something that does not promote health or well-being. So I use muscle testing in a variety of ways as a professional organizer. So when we do the emotional work, people are in a chair and I'm asking questions because there's almost always a priority concern. And I ask the questions. The muscle testing will allow me to kind of narrow in on what that primary issue is. And then we go through and we release it. And the release is never the same for each person, but there are release, we call them lyrics, that we go through that help people unload. The other way I use muscle testing, which is kind of fun, is when people are having a hard time deciding on whether or not I keep this or I donate it, or, I get rid of it altogether. I use muscle testing, and then they know, if the muscles are weak, then they know that whatever that item is, it's not in their best interest to keep it. And so that makes it, it takes me out of the equation altogether. They can feel when their muscle goes weak, and then they know, well, that's not in my best interest to keep anymore. And we do this thank you for whatever that was, for whatever purpose that item served, and we let it go on to bless somebody else's life.
I've tried to do muscle testing. I find myself getting in my head too much and I can't. And there's many different ways. I mean, I've heard this is one way.
Right.
You spread two fingers. If you're able to, then it's not a truthful statement. Um,
And that's how I do it remotely.
oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Ah,
I use this middle finger because it's the strongest finger I have, and then I'll put this one right on top of it to make sure it's not going anywhere. And then this hand, and all the way up to the base of the joint here. And if I can run it through, it's a weak response. And if I can hold it, it's a strong response.
so you're actually you're using essentially three fingers.
Mm-hmm.
I never thought of
Yeah.
that. All right. And then
Well, I got to make sure this thing stays locked down when I do it.
well, now I'm learning stuff here, and even using the other finger to break the chain.
Right. And go all the way up to this first
See, I,
knuckle.
I I didn't do that. So now I need to try this again. So, a truthful statement, my name is Steve. If you try to break the chain, you shouldn't be able to do it. It's truthful.
Well, so here's an interesting thing. So you would think that your name is Steve is a truthful response. But if you've got so much trauma, there are parts of you that just kind of step out of the driver's seat a little bit. And I've had this experience for myself where I'll say my name is Emily and my arm goes down. And it's because whatever parts, and we're all made of parts. And when things are painful, there's parts of us that check out a little bit. And so that true part of me, that I call it true self or soul or knowingness, it has multiple names. But when that part isn't in the driver's seat, you can muscle test and say, my name is Steve, and the response will be weak. So I ask
You go
something
deep.
that's
Emily, you go deep, and I think it's so cool. And you're a professional organizer. I don't even have these
no, what am I
conversations.
doing here?
I don't have these conversations this deep with people who do muscle testing and therapy, just that alone. You're doing that and helping people declutter their lives. So would a reasonable statement to do this be, I'm wearing a blue shirt?
That's a better statement for sure.
Okay.
Or we've got, all these questions that we ask, are you wearing cowboy boots? Are you 6'8" tall? Questions that,
No
the
brainers.
whole
It's a
name
yes or a
issue.
no. Yeah. But I totally get what you're saying in terms of using our name, because there have been moments, depending on little T trauma, big T trauma that we've been through, where we've kind of disconnected from ourselves to protect ourselves. So it totally makes sense.
Right.
Wow.
And that's the beauty of the psyche. That's the beauty of the body and the mind, is that when things are painful, we're not built to abide in pain. We shrink from it as humans. And so when things are incredibly painful, then we just kind of check out a little bit. Not so much that we don't know what's going on, but enough so that if I were to say, my name is Emily, and it runs through, like it's not a strong response, then I know that I've got something to work on. And I've always got something to work on. That's just the nature of humans.
We do. Want to ask you, is it okay when you've done the work and you've gotten to the point where things don't bother you like they used to? Like sometimes you would get anxiety about dealing with this and dealing with that. And you've gotten to the point where, I don't want to say you've gone numb, but it's almost as if you get a force field on, like, I'm not going to let that bother me. Oh, look what just happened. Back in the day, you may freak out. Now it's like, yeah, whatever. Okay, well, whatever. It's all right. We'll deal.
Yeah, that happens. We
Is
call
that
that shift.
is that a good thing?
That's a wonderful thing. I think we all have this soundtrack in our heads. I call it chatter. And the chatter is not always very nice. It's always questioning you. What are you doing? What do you think you're doing? You can't do this. It's not nice.
Mm,
And so when that release happens, I find that the chatter is just quiet and it's peaceful.
mm.
And that's a welcome break from some other times in my life when the chatter is screaming at me and saying not nice things.
I get
But
it.
I had an experience not long after we married. We went for a glider ride, and I don't know if you've done this. Not a hang glider, but just a glider. And a glider looks like an airplane, but there's no engine,
Okay.
and it's tethered to a real airplane that has an engine. And you roll down the runway, and this thing will tow you all into the air. It takes a while, and you'll get to a certain altitude, and while you're being towed up, you can hear the noise of the engine of the plane that's towing you, and yet you can look around and see all these cool things. And then when it's time for the tow plane to leave, it releases the tether, and it's a little bit of a ka-chunk sound, and then the sound fades away, and it's just quiet and peaceful. And so that for me is how it feels after these emotional releases. It's just a little bit of a ka-chunk and then
Mm.
quiet. And I always tell my clients, be looking for the shift. Sometimes it happens in the first couple hours. Sometimes it takes up to 3 days. But there may be some small or maybe even a big difference in how you handle a certain situation or how you are around a certain person. Or like you said, something that may have lit you up before doesn't really, it's just rolling right off you after the release. So we teach our clients, and I've been doing this for almost 10 years, to look for what that shift is. And sometimes it's miraculous.
Honestly, I was just describing myself.
In your shift?
Yeah. I
Yeah,
used to
that
let things
peace is
bother me.
amazing, huh?
It is. I call it my quiet calm.
Yeah.
And now I'm at the point in my journey where I'm putting up the boundaries and my terms of stuff I don't want to deal with anymore. People that are just energy sucks, just people on the phone, problems. Oh, like I don't want to use my energy for that. It's just, why am I wasting my time with that? You
That's the
want to
beauty of wisdom.
maybe and it's also you want to help people. I don't know if I shared with you, I did a strength assessment recently.
No.
And yeah, it's called the Clifton Strengths. And there's 34 different strengths it identifies by answering questions. So number one strength came back was communication. Not surprised about that.
That's very convenient.
Yeah, well, no brainer, I guess. Number two was empathy.
Good.
And good, but also bad in my mind, because I take on other people's problems, challenges, situations where now it just takes up my life. And I'm not the therapist to be a therapist. But it's so
Right.
funny because I would call other people out and say, you're an empath. You realize, what's going on? And that was me. And I didn't realize it until I took this test. But yeah, the wisdom that comes once you start doing this work, um, it's radical. Like it's game changing. It really is.
For sure. And there are ways, I know I practice these for myself because I am, up in people's closets, in their personal spaces, in their
Mm,
homes, and then we're doing this energy work. There's things that you can do to make sure that you don't take that on. Not that it's undesirable in any way, but it's always nice to just be you and to have, the negative things bounce off you. So I'll just take a hand and make it like a samurai sword and cut 3 times in front of my solar plexus. And that cuts negative energetic cords. And that
wow.
just kind of keeps you in on your vibe or whatever. And it cuts the negative attachments that we have to the people that we run into, that we bump into, every day. You
How
can't
often should
cut
you
the
do that?
cords, the good cords.
How often could you do that?
Actually, after every conversation.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, conversations with clients, and clients have complaints. They have things that are distressing them. After I get off a call, it's not a statement or a judgment on that person because we all have our stuff, right? But I'm just cutting cords. I'm cutting cords after, actually, I'm cutting cords after being on the computer so that I don't take anything of that on, whatever I've encountered, online.
Hmm.
Yeah, after every conversation, after being on the computer, television, any kind of screen, I'll do it. It's just kind of a nice way to not take on anybody else's stuff.
Thank you for that. I think that's so cool. And you know what?
I got
If you
lots of those tools because I don't want to take it on. I'm
yeah,
not able to best serve people if I just get into that stuff with them. So I do the things that'll energetically keep me in a space where I can be of help to people, of service.
I look at it this way. If you're a doctor, you met with a patient, the patient leaves, you got another one coming in. What does the doctor usually do? They wash their hands. So, kind of the same way in dealing with people, certainly in your capacity, but all of us, when let's say you had a room full of people, there's all different energies going on there. You took on
Right.
some of that. You don't even realize it. Just, okay. So three good chops. And what do you got to lose? I know it sounds woo woo.
It does. It does. In
It does.
traffic, I do that in traffic too, actually. I
I hadn't
forgot.
even
Like I'm
thought
in the
about that.
car, I do something dumb or something, somebody else does something dumb or I've got something to say about how somebody's driving. I'm cutting cords 3 times and it's just right in front of your solar plexus. And you can only cut negative cords. You can't cut cords of joy or love or light. You can only
Hmm.
cut negative attachments to yourself.
And you can Google this. YouTube, there's a ton of videos about cord cutting. This is just the easiest
Right.
way to just kind of freshen things up, if you will. Wow.
For sure.
Hmm. And this is all about what we're talking about. dealing with that energy, those traumas from the past, how it translates to your clutter, your organization or disorganization. Emily, we're out of time. This
What?
happens every
How
time.
did that happen?
I don't, no idea. I could just keep going. Like there's so much, and we had a whole bunch of stuff we are going to dig into.
We'll do that next time.
Yeah. Releasing negative emotions. That's one that it's on our radar. How do we find you? How do we connect with you?
You can find me on the socials on Instagram and Facebook. The handle is Built to Be Visible. I have an online website. It's builttobevisible.com. And you can always call the area code 480-221-8874.
One thing is for sure, I don't have to cut any cords with you because you're all good energy.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Likewise. I appreciate the exploration and the things that interest me. So thank you.
Yeah, super cool. And we'll catch up next time. Okay.
Sounds great.
Thanks. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.